Hey everyone, and welcome to Screams After Midnight. I am Peter, that is Tim, and we talk about horror movies on this show. And this episode is rather notable and kind of a bittersweet episode. We were originally, if Tim can stop fighting with his mic, and I almost phrased that as if Mike was a person, like Tim's fighting with Mike. But this one's a little bit bittersweet in terms of this was originally supposed to be a review of Saw 2. However, you will see from the title that it is not a review of Saw 2. That'll still be coming. We'll probably do that next week. This is instead going to be a review of Night of the Living Dead. Now, of course, the reason why we're doing this is because George A. Romero passed away this past weekend. Great big shame. I was kind of really shocked to see this. Not that he was a really young guy or anything, but it came out of nowhere. It was like, oh shit, that's another one of the big horror legend directors gone. It's kind of like, damn. Yeah. So
I don't think he wasn't like super old. He was definitely old, but
I believe he was 77.
Yeah, so that's not too bad. But especially like Hollywood years. But I don't know. This I was actually a little surprised at how much this affected me. Usually,
yeah, I agree.
Celebrity deaths are kind of. I mean, it's always sad when someone goes, but. I guess maybe I'm not attached to that many celebrities, but George Romero, man.
It does feel oddly selective how there'll be so many, 2016 was notorious for a lot of celebrity deaths, and there was like one coming every couple of weeks, and it felt like it was never ending. It was a lot of big names, and yeah, obviously you're always sympathetic. You're like, oh, that's a shame.
Yeah.
So-and-so's died, whatever. But every once in a while there'll be one that just feels a bit more personal, that hits you a little bit harder. And George Romero kind of felt that way. It kind of like, oh shit, Romero went. And it's probably the one that's affected me the most in the last year or so, honestly.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to go through and rank how much each death has affected me, but
right, yeah.
Certainly he's the one that sticks out the most of recent times. So that kind of, well, actually, now that I'm saying that, Bill Paxton did pass away earlier this year as well. That was the last one that hit me. Yeah, Bill Paxton was a big one. Bill Paxton was a big deal. And he was a lot more surprised because he was only just hitting 60, I think, so he was even younger. So yeah, Romero, of course, he is the father of the modern zombie. So what else were we going to do but Night of the Living Dead upon hearing this? As soon as I heard that we have to do this next, this is the next thing we're doing.
And this was something we talked about doing it before. We knew we were going to get to it someday, and it's a little unfortunate that these are the circumstances, but it is
there is no way in hell we were never not going to do his trilogy.
Yeah.
I mean,
of course, yeah.
Beyond the trilogy, we get to Land and Diary and all that stuff, which I've not seen all of them, but I didn't like Land. We'll probably do them at some point, but certainly this week, next week, and the week after, you can expect Night, Dawn, and Day. That's happening. So,
yeah.
Night of the Living Dead, that's what we're going to talk about. I'll just give you a spoiler warning right now. I feel like it's an old, it's 1968. I don't really want to dance around spoilers. Needless to say, see it. God damn it.
Yeah.
I think that's first and foremost.
I think if you have any type of love for the zombie drama genre, like, even if you've never seen this, but if you like Resident Evil and Walking Dead and any modern zombie, I feel like it's really owed to go back and watch this, because this, like, I'm always surprised when you go back and watch this, because it's like everything is there, like everything we know about zombies and about zombie movies, like every idea we have, it's all present in this movie.
Yeah, everything goes back to what he created. Without him, there would be no Walking Dead, there would be no Resident Evil, there would be no anything else. Like to pick any zombie movie, any zombie comic book, any zombie TV show the last 50 years, and that's how long it's been, by the way. This is 50 years old next year. That's how old this is, isn't it?
Oh wow.
So you can thank him for all of it. And I know for some, there's such a thing as zombie fatigue. We're all feeling it a little bit. Like, there's been times when they've went a bit over and board with it, but we would not have the modern zombie without him. So we're going to talk about Night of the Living Dead and why it's such a fantastic film, what's great about it, what works, and obviously I think the big reason why this movie holds up so well, beyond just being really well shot and kind of spooky and scary, and the zombies work and are effective, black and white helps a lot, but also social commentary. This is like
Oh yeah.
Romero was big, especially in his first three zombie movies, Night and Dawn especially. Amples of social commentary. It's about so much of the time period it was made in. In fact, when I watched it earlier today, and I tweeted out afterwards, I said it's kind of a shame how relevant this movie still is, and it's been 50 goddamn years, and almost everything in it still relates to something going on right now. It's really kind of depressing and pathetic, but here we are.
So obviously, he's created the, first zombie movie. But did he, was he kind of the first person to ever do this, like social commentary through horror kind of thing?
I wish you'd told me we were going to ask that, Tim. I would have done some research.
I feel like at the very least, he's probably the most notable.
Absolutely most notable. He probably is the first, and I'm sure there's maybe going to be an obscure example or something that is not speaking to my mind. And this is a big thing. Now this isn't completely credit to this movie. Psycho takes some of this credit here, but Psycho did this thing, and Night of the Living Dead does the same thing to even greater effect. Where before then, horror was typically set in like exotic locations with castles and spooky islands, and it was all kind of fantastical. And then Psycho and Night of the Living Dead did this crazy idea. They brought it home. They brought it to present day, middle class, even lower class, like regular everyday locations, and that's what they did with it. Psycho did that with of course the motel and kind of just a serial killer. And then this did it with zombies. And the zombies, of course, are a metaphor for a number of things, and we're going to talk about that, obviously.
And speaking of location, I always feel a little point of pride. I was born in Western Pennsylvania, like not too reasonably far from where they filmed this and Dawn of the Dead. So I always thought that was cool.
Did you choose where you were born, Tim?
No.
Then why are you proud of it?
I don't know, because it's like the one cool thing about the area that I was born.
I thought you were going to say it was the one cool thing about me. I was going to get really sad and like, oh poor Tim. I was born here where Night of the Living Dead was filmed. It's the one thing I'm clinging to, Peter. Don't take it away from me.
I mean, there's not a lot of stuff that's very interesting from where I'm from, and that's like the one little thing that's kind of cool.
I'll be honest, I always thought you were from Rhode Island. It wasn't until when this came up and you said, oh, I was born near there. I'm like, wait, what?
I lived in Rhode Island most of my life, but I was born in Western Pennsylvania. That's where all my kind of extended family
born and raised
still lives. Not raised, I was like,
on the playground is where you spent most of your days.
Yes, me and Will Smith. Up in Latrobe.
And yes, before anyone says anything, I know that was Philadelphia, right? Before anyone comments and is like, no, that wasn't the song Fresh Prince. I know. It was close enough. I went for it, okay?
But anyway, that's and it's a little cool because during the movie when they're looking at the news broadcast and stuff, you can see the name of my hometown on there. So
what was the name of the hometown?
Latrobe.
Latrobe. Oh, sounds French.
Maybe. I don't know.
And the pride just gets thinner and thinner as we go through the show. Just less and less of it. So what is the Living Dead? What is the gist of it? So basically, a woman named Barbara and her brother Johnny, I want to say. They are going to this graveyard, cemetery, which is a good 3-hour drive from wherever they live, because they come here because this is where their father was buried, and their mother insists that they go out there once a year on his anniversary of his death, and place a little display thing, crucifix thing. I'd say flowers, but it wasn't really flowers. It was more like a little crucifix sort of ornament or whatever.
Ornament decoration thing. Yeah.
But lo and behold, there's what of course we came to understand as a zombie. And he's coming to get you, Barbara. He's coming to get you.
I love that line.
So, and he gets killed pretty quickly, and she runs off. She drives off, and like an idiot, crashes the car, and then runs to this farmhouse that's in the middle of nowhere, and sort of there's some of her creeping about the house. She eventually runs into Ben, who's kind of the main hero of the movie, and
Super badass.
super badass. And he's very practical. He starts boarding up the windows. She's kind of shell shocked at this point and can't really do anything. And he kind of takes charge. The movie kind of is handed over to him as a sort of the protagonist, and he takes charge. And from there, he tries to do these precautions. He gets the radio going. We eventually have other characters come up from the basement who are kind of led by Harry, who's the main one, who's kind of antagonistic towards Ben. And it's about them surviving, come up with a game plan, and ultimately, you know, where the movie goes. So it feels stupid to even ask the question on this one, Tim. Because, like, you know, do you like Night of the Living Dead? Of course you do. You're not a fool. Well,
No. Yeah, I mean, it it goes without saying, but I absolutely love this movie. It is terrific. It still holds up. It's fantastic. It's the first of its kind, and it's still enjoyable. There's a reason why it's still stuck around. It's still, you know, quoted and shown, and, you know, people still emulate it. It's amazing. I love it.
yeah, that is fantastic. That is worthy of the heaps of praise that it is given. Before this, zombies were simply the voodoo kind. You know, like the idea of this virus spreading, you know, brainless, brain-eating or flesh-eating zombie is, you know, this came from here. And what I think is funny about watching it now, you know, with all the, you know, we just understand what zombies are now. It's funny how this movie kind of spreads out the information. Like, at first, it just seems like a crazy guy coming towards her.
Yeah.
And then later on in the news broadcast, like, oh, it's the dead coming back to life. And then later on, oh, they're eating flesh. And then very late on, you have to shoot them in the head. That's how you put them down. Like, it's just funny how it slowly, it's almost like a big reveal. You need to shoot them in the head. But as a modern, you know, movie watcher, I'm like, shoot them in the head, Ben. Stop it. Stop shooting them in the chest, you asshole. Stop it.
Yeah. I kind of love the way they dole out information here. It's not like spoon fed to you. It's not just all at once right at the beginning. You know, some guy explained to it. You get little bits and pieces, and even with that, it's still not entirely, you know, sure exactly what's going on. Like, you know, they kind of hint that it's probably, you know, from this satellite.
Do you know, I'd completely forgotten about that. Like, potential explanation. Like, I think in my head, I just always thought of it as, oh, it's just random, like, no one knows why. But, like, there is, like, this scene in the news at one point where they're like, oh, was it this satellite that came down from Venus that had radiation on it? And I'm like, holy shit, I forgot about this.
I like that it doesn't flat out, like, really say it. Like, we're kind of led to believe, like, oh, that probably has something to do with it, but it's not.
It doesn't matter.
Like, yeah. In the end, it's basically about...
For the most part, it doesn't matter. There's maybe one slight way you could argue it matters thematically with something, but and so that's it. Yeah, it's them fending off zombies, and the movie, of course, is largely like I think one of the things that's apparent watching the movie is that the zombies are very kind of, you know, they don't really care about what's going on. Yeah, they're coming for you because they've got this animalistic need to eat, and they're just kind of coming. And again, they're brainless. What the movie's really about is not about how zombies after man. It's about how man turns on man in a crisis. Like, that's kind of the big thing in the movie, and there's a lot of parallels to other things. It's definitely, like we say, social commentary on two fronts as well. But I think the first one that always springs to mind for me is Vietnam, because this was 68, so this was still during Vietnam. This was a big thing, and the big thing about Vietnam compared to earlier wars is this was the first one that was televised. This is the first one that everyone was kind of, you know, at home seeing what was going on and being horrified from it. And I think the big thing here is that this is literally bringing a war to the home. Like, it's literally people in a siege in this house with the combatants coming towards them. And then on top of that, the fact that the news and the TV and the radio play such a big role in the plot. Like, there's so many scenes in this movie of them sitting down and looking at the news to hear about what's going on and what to do. You know, it's all very kind of like, you know, them, you know, people at the time watching for Vietnam stories, like, what is this horrific stuff going on? And even some of the language that's used kind of emulates some of the things that were said back then. So I thought that was that's the first big thing for me.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. I usually don't really think about that much. I guess because I'm usually not really thinking about the specific time period, but yeah, I can definitely see like a lot of similarities to that. Obviously the kind of big easy one that usually jumps out to me is, of course, like racism and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's very neat because it works on its own as a theme, but it also ties into the Vietnam stuff. Because obviously the civil rights movement was another thing that was going on in the 60s, and I think it's funny because George Romero has often said that he never actually went out to cast a black actor in the role. He never specified. Duane Jones was just the right person for the job. But the funny thing is they hadn't even finished the script when he cast him. So as much as some people will say, oh, he didn't, he just cast him because he was the right for the role, but they still like that ending specifically, like the social commentary that was coming out of that, the racial subtext was definitely there. They definitely thought of that. And I think he even said in interviews that Duane Jones helped develop that and helped add to some of those moments.
Yeah, I think I saw someone tweet out the other day, like a quote from George Romero that was something along the lines of, "Oh, I didn't cast him because he was black. I cast him because he gave the best audition."
Yeah,
which is really cool. Especially thinking about that time for a filmmaker.
Yeah, I mean,
for a filmmaker to be like, oh, yeah, this guy's great. I'm gonna put him in my movie as the star.
For the time period, and that's the other thing in the movie. It's the war on two fronts. It's the war at home, both in terms of race, just in terms of left versus right, and liberals versus the sort of the hard right, the nut jobs who don't want any of these changes and all the rest of it. And one of the things that I've heard the character of Ben compared to, or like sort of in terms of going back to the idea of Vietnam, is if you compare the zombies to the soldiers, because part of the civil rights movement is that famously Muhammad Ali refused to go to war. He refused to be drafted, partly because why should I fight for a country that doesn't respect me, doesn't respect us? Like that was kind of part of the idea. And one of the reasons you can look at this movie is you can say the zombies represent the army coming to draft Ben, but he's fighting them off. He's refusing to just be one of the mindless horde that are going to go and fight for the country. So there's some really neat subtext in there along those ideas. But then it gets super interesting because obviously at the end of the movie, Ben does survive the night. He survives through the antagonist, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as well. He survives through the zombies. He locks himself in the cellar, and then eventually comes up at the end and he gets shot. The sort of the search party or the seek and destroy party who are going through, they see him through a window and they just shoot him, and he just immediately says, "Oh, there's another one dead, another one for the fire," and that's kind of the last lines of the movie. And it's a really dark moment. It's scary how relevant that still is. It is scary.
Oh, yeah.
The idea of them just seeing him and shooting him on sight without even questioning it, how relevant that is today is absolutely, it is terrifying, quite frankly, that nothing seems to have advanced in that sense. But again, what this kind of represents is that he fights the draft, as it were, from the zombies. He fights the racism of the sort of the upper class white dude who's the antagonist in this movie, who's battling him for power. He wins all those things, but then at the end he still lost anyway. And I've read that as being like, oh, that was kind of how the silent majority still voted for Nixon after this period. And it was kind of like again, those ideas are all kind of coming together and forming this commentary on multiple fronts. You've got the racism, you've got the Vietnam War, you've got the social warfare at home with the left versus the right and the liberal sort of movement coming up, both in terms of just actual, well, not actual liberals, but the actual civil rights movement, and then just the everyone else who's liberal and saying, no, we want to put an end to this and we want to put an end to that, and we want to have a better future and away with all these old values. And you've got all that through, and like I say, the antagonist in the movie, Cooper, Harry Cooper, he's constantly at Ben's throat. He's constantly challenging him on everything. The idea that he doesn't want him to be in charge. I think it's really impressive that throughout the entire film, there's never a racial word uttered. There's never racial insults. There's never even like, I'm not following you because you're black. No, he never even says that. There's nothing like that at all. And yet it plays out exactly with all those racial themes and like subtext. Like the tension's still there. Neither of them just ever actually say anything about it.
Yeah.
No one ever points out that he's black or that the other guy's white. No one ever says anything about it. It's just the tension is just actually there. And then you've got the character in the middle, I think what's his name, Tom? He's like the one in the middle who's like, no, maybe he's got a point. Maybe Ben has a point.
Kind of like the younger teen couple that
Yeah, he kind of represents, no, let's find some middle ground, let's do this. It's almost like he's kind of the liberal, like Harry Cooper's kind of the hard conservative, white man with power who doesn't want to give up said power. So the idea of him having powers, kind of, it's against his entire belief system. And then like Ben's trying to fight that. He's just like, I'm just trying to get by here, man. Like, stop this bullshit. So all that's there. It's all in the movie. It's really it's so layered with all this stuff, all this commentary, all this subtext. It's so thick with it. Like you can sit and analyze this movie for ages and never even talk about how good it is as a horror movie.
Yeah, but I mean that's the great thing about it, though, is even if you put all that stuff aside, there's multiple interpretations, multiple feelings and stuff you can get out of it. But then at the end of the day, even if you took all that away, it just works as a great horror movie.
Oh yeah, it's a bottle movie, which I like, Tim. I like a good bottle movie. It's just a group of characters in the house trying to survive from this onslaught of zombies coming from all directions, and and I love survival stuff like this. Well, if we try and distract them like this, we can get to the gas pumps and we can do this, and and for a brief moment, it's like he is actually working with Harry. And then there's that great moment where Harry doesn't immediately let them back in because they have that stupid accident where Tom and his girlfriend slash wife, basically, like he shoots off the the pump and it just it spreads gasoline all over the side of the truck and it goes on fire. And it's like, well, that's going to blow up now.
Yeah,
good luck with that. But it's like he doesn't let Ben right in. He doesn't help him, and even though he kind of has a little moment where he does go up to help at the door afterwards, it's there's this great start of tension, and then eventually Harry gets the gun and he tries to take down Ben. Like he points it at him instead of the zombies, and that's where it kind of comes to a big climax, in terms of the tension. And Ben gets the gun back, and here's the interesting thing: Ben does eventually shoot Harry, but it's not in self-defense because he already had the gun away from him. He's actually standing pointing the gun at him while he's on the ground for like a good 5 seconds. And he almost even smirks before he pulls the trigger. And to me, what that was saying, what that was kind of getting across to the audience was, this is the escalation of hatred, and how even though the other guy was definitely in the wrong and he was definitely the one who was spewing the hate, eventually the other side will start spewing hate back. Because he kind of vindictively, in a vengeful manner, just takes him out when he doesn't have to.
Yeah, I mean, you can only push someone so far, before they eventually are gonna, snap back.
Yeah. So it was about this, the cycle of violence and the cycle of hatred. Hate breeds hate, violence breeds violence. That kind of idea. That to me, that's what that moment was saying to me. But yeah, let's talk about the horror stuff. Let's talk about the actual. The meat and potatoes of the zombies. Obviously, I think the big moment for everyone typically tends to be the girl in the basement waking up. When you go downstairs, when the wife comes downstairs and she's already eaten like half of her father's arm, and then she comes over slowly and like gets the tool, and that's why the weird things actually that kind of went away from the zombies is that in this movie
using weapons and stuff.
They kind of actually use tools and stuff, whereas after that, I feel like even in Dawn, you don't really see that. I don't think, at least not from memory. I don't think you do.
But this is a fantastic scene, and again, talking about what we typically think of with the zombie movies, almost every movie has the incident where someone is bitten, and you're basically just waiting for that person to turn. And then again, we see that already fully fleshed out here.
Just imagine, though, right? Just imagine watching this at the time, though, and not knowing that was actually going to be a thing, because it was a twist, essentially. At the time, it was a twist. For us, it's not, because for us, you got a bet you're going to become a zombie. But like at the time, this would have been like mind blowing. Oh shit, she's a zombie. She's getting back up. She's going to eat her mother. And she does. It would have been
so great seeing that, like, when it first comes out, like I'd probably see it at drive-through or something. That would have been a great scene, and it looks so cool in the black and white, just her walking slowly, and the basement is so shadowy, and it looks so cool, just the way characters walk in and out of the shadows. Really creepy and effective. Another
part of that scene as well is that I'm pretty sure there's no music, like it's silent, because earlier on in the film and at other points in the film there is a lot of music. In fact, the opening like 10-15 minutes where Barbara runs to the house and she's running through the house on her own and she's trying to try the phone and she just kind of running around scared and she's looking out the window at the one zombie coming after her. That was very classical, I thought, that opening in like 15-20 minutes. It felt like an old movie. And not just because it was in black and white, just the way the strings were all going in the soundtrack and the way she was kind of like running scared and the camera angles were very kind of Hitchcocky and almost was, Dutch angles looking down the stairs and all that kind of stuff. And it's great stuff actually. I mean, I like that style of stuff, it's great, but it did feel like over the course of the movie it kind of shifted because it said, right, we don't need music in this scene because this scene is horrific on its own. And sure enough, and I think as well, the scene where after the truck explodes and the zombies all come up to get a bite to eat and they actually start taking out bits of food and they're eating it, and it's like, it's probably really, I mean, for the time I'm sure this was super graphic. Now it's like nothing, like now we've had way worse things on screen. And you mentioned the black and white. The black and white, of course, beautiful. Part of the reason why the black and white, I mean, it was cheaper to shoot in black and white. I'm sure that was a factor because it's not like this was big budget. It was very low budget. But at the time,
a very early independent film as well.
Oh, absolutely. And again, I think that almost ties into the time of the era of filmmaking. Is this was right when independent filmmaking started. Like before this, it was all studio stuff, and this was the start of, oh no, we can raise a little bit of money and go out and shoot a little film. Like, this is when cinema got kind of risky and like they started doing crazier things because it wasn't all going through the machine. Like it was these young go-getters doing their crazy stuff and whatever. But you mentioned the black and white, and the thing about the black and white is that at this time, I mean, color TV was normal at this time. Most movies that came out were in color, certainly. But the one thing that was always still in black and white, or at least most of the time from my understanding, was the news. Because this was actually the reason why Hitchcock shot Psycho in black and white, even though he'd already been doing movies in color, is because it made it feel more real, because it was like a news broadcast.
Oh, interesting.
I think that's pretty funny. Or, well, that's just not funny, but interesting. Like, I think that's a fascinating reason for doing it. Because now that doesn't make a difference. Now, obviously, the news is in color. Because, of course, you can get the news in 4K now, I'm sure.
But, like you kind of mentioned earlier, though, it's kind of funny because even though black and white is like an older kind of thing, it makes it like hold up better, like than it probably would have, if it was color or so.
Yeah, maybe. Like it lets you hide a lot of things, I guess, because you're not worried about the color of things. Like part of the reason why they made a shot in black and white as well is because they could cheat with the effects, because like the blood might not have been red because it didn't need to be. It just had to be dark so that it looked like blood on black and white. Because that's actually one of the things when we talk about Dawn of the Dead next week, is that the one thing in that movie that does not hold up is the blood. The blood looks atrocious. More on that next week. Whereas obviously here in black and white, it doesn't. You don't really see it, so it's okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I do like the kind of the escalation of the zombies, and I don't think zombie is ever actually said in the movie. Is it? They call them like ghouls.
They call them ghouls. I believe. I couldn't tell you where it is, but I believe there's a famous bit of trivia that it is mentioned once in the movie, so I'm going to go find that for you. You keep talking.
All right. But yeah, I like the escalation of the zombies, where as we first start, it's just like, one guy attacking, her in the graveyard, and then she runs to the house, and you see there's like a few people crowding out the house, and I like that it builds, like as the movie goes on, there's more and more people approaching until you get to the end, and it's just like these hands just bursting through the walls of the house, and as we go on, people, there isn't like a lot of makeup or anything on it, but I feel like it's later as it goes and we start to see a little bit more people with some slight makeup and stuff on their faces. So I just like the way that it kind of builds.
Yeah. I mean, arguably, I think looking at it now, the first couple of zombies probably don't have enough makeup on them. Like they look just kind of like crazy people.
Yeah.
But it is. Nah, I mean, it's interesting. Oh God, I'm having trouble finding it. I'm sure there's a bit of trivia that says it was uttered once in the movie. But maybe I'm misremembering.
I wouldn't be surprised, but yeah, for the most part, they usually refer to them as ghouls or
those things. Typically, was the more normal term.
But that has to be one of my favorite scenes, though, is once the arms start bursting through the doors. It's just such a cool visual, and of course very reminiscent to a lot of other stuff that we like the Resident Evil games and stuff.
Oh yeah, it's hard to watch that scene of the arms coming through the boards without thinking of that one hallway in Resident Evil 2. It is impossible to watch that for me and not think of that moment. But again, that's another thing we wouldn't have without the Night of the Living Dead and this Dead trilogy. Like it's full of those things. And I mentioned earlier how like the music went away during the scene with the girl. I'm pretty sure most of the time, whenever it was like the zombies just outside, once it went nighttime, I'm pretty sure most of those scenes don't have music either. Like, I seem to recall a lot of them just stumbling around in silence.
Yeah.
And I think that's really effective because again, it made it feel kind of colder and more real and all those things. And I think it's really inventive as well when you've got a movie set in this one location that you keep it interesting visually. And part of the way he does that is by going outside and seeing the zombie horde getting bigger and all these other things. But yeah, so much of the movie is watching the TV actually. It's them watching the TV and like listening to the information, hearing the broadcast, and it very much is reminiscent of all the war reports that would have been common at the time, and then listening for the information. So no, it's quality stuff.
Yeah. It's now I know that they have the remake in 1990, but did they also at some point do a colorized version of this original movie?
I'm sure they did. I would be shocked if they didn't.
I'm pretty sure they did. I don't think I've ever actually seen it, though.
Oh, I never want to see it. Like I hate colorized movies. Are like they're so unnatural and creepy. I hate it. I hate it with a passion.
I don't know if I've ever actually. Well, I'm sure I saw one at some point, but probably just didn't realize it. I don't know if I ever actively like saw one where I was like, "Oh, I know this is what this is."
Yeah. Nah. It's unnatural to me, and especially with this movie. Like, I think that the imagery is so good. Like it's such a nice looking movie. And it's a real testament, given the money they had, how they had to do with it. If I'm going to be critical of like the filmmaking at all, is there's a couple of weird edits here or there, which I think is just a symptom of it being so low budget, and they only have because it typically tended to be around moments where there's a violent special effect or something like that, and it's almost like okay, we can't really do more takes of it, so we just have to kind of edit it. We'll work with what we've got, and ultimately sometimes that made for a kind of awkward little edit. So there's a few of those in the movie. Like if I'm going to play devil's advocate and critique something in it, like that would be what I critique. But like beyond that, like the characters, I mean, Ben's pretty good, Harry's a good antagonist, so they're pretty cool.
And we didn't really mention his wife at all, but it's I like that relationship just in the way that it kind of bolsters how much like of a jerk Harry is. He's so controlling of his wife, and like you can tell, probably is part of that, archetype of the time where, just this angry, flustered guy who thinks he's doing the right thing by, being very boisterous and in charge and stuff, trying to protect his family when really he's, like doing the worst thing for them.
Yeah. I also think they're constant debating, as well as being like a comment on like, racial tension and like sort of their place in society. I think it's also maybe representative of, at the time, probably like everyone and their mother was probably had an opinion on the Vietnam War and what should Americans do? What should we do as a nation here? And I'm sure everyone had an opinion. So just the core idea that Ben's like, no, we should stay up here because we've got places to move and we can strategize up here. And then you've got him who's like, no, let's just bury our head in the sand. Let's go down there in the cellar and not deal with it. Kind of ideas. Like it was to me, it was almost like a criticism on that, where it's like these are the different types of opinions we have. And then you have someone like Barbara who just goes into shell shock. And again, if you want to compare it to soldiers, like the idea of going into shell shock, and if she represents the normal person at home witnessing these atrocities on the news, then she's the person who can't cope when it actually happens near her. She's the, like, Ben almost plays off like he maybe already had done like some, a tour in a war or something. Like it feels like he's had some experience. He's very practical. He knows what he's doing. Whereas she's like immediately just shell shocked, and she's kind of a zombie herself for like half the movie, where she's just sitting there staring into space, or she's sleeping, or she's whatever. So, you know, I think there's so much to read into this movie. It's actually kind of insane. I think people often say that the commentary in Dawn of the Dead is a bit more on the surface, and I suppose it is. But I feel like there's a lot more here in this one. Like, it's a lot more complex, and there's a lot more different things you can relate it to. You can talk about Vietnam, you can talk about social warfare, you can talk about racial relations, you can talk about all these different things. They're all in there. And Romero, as a self-proclaimed liberal and hippie, I believe, is something he once called himself. So, no, it's really, really fascinating stuff. It took 7 months to shoot this as well.
Oh, wow.
7 months. I believe it was one of these kind of like Texas Chainsaw, where they were shooting it like at weekends and stuff. You know, because maybe they had day jobs, and then they'd go out and shoot more at the weekend, kind of idea.
That makes sense. Yeah.
I think that's the way it went, but I could be wrong. But it was 7 months. 7 months of shooting.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely has that feel of a first, director's first kind of young independent movie, but again, it's really impressive for how much of it works, and again still holds up.
It's honestly, it's definitely his most at least out of the ones I've seen. I've not seen all of his movies, of course, but out of the films I've seen, or just compare it to the rest of the zombie movies he's done, it's definitely the most cinematic. Like, it feels like this classic movie, this picture. Whereas I might prefer Dawn of the Dead for a couple of reasons, but it's less visually impressive. The black and white here actually gives this much more of a style. The way he shoots is more stylish. The pacing is more deliberate and more kind of creepy. Things are slowly creeping up on you, kind of idea.
I can see that. I think we mentioned it before on other movies that we've reviewed, but you see this popping up a lot because it's royalty free. So
yeah, it's public domain.
Yeah, and it was actually weird because they just put The Void on Netflix. So I was watching with my girlfriend this weekend because she hadn't seen it yet, and we started the movie, and it's just a little bit after we started the movie that I saw the news on my phone that Romero had died, and I was like, oh man, bummer. But then it was like 5 minutes later, we see Night of the Living Dead is playing on the TV in the hospital room in The Void. And
it's weird that that's going to be part of his legacy, especially when it was a mistake. But the reason why it's public domain is because they filed it under a different name, because they had that. Do you remember what the name was before Night of the Living Dead?
I don't.
I can't remember
off the top of my head.
But they had a different title, and they changed it last minute, but they forgot to change the trademark or something like that. And
I heard. Yeah, I just actually heard about this recently. I think maybe this year or like late last year, and I think it was something as simple as like the title card they used or whatever just forgot to have like the little TM on it or whatever. Yeah, I mean, I could be wrong. I think I heard some people talking about it on a podcast, but
I don't think that would make the whole movie public domain. That might make the title usable for people. I don't think that would let people use the movie itself, though. My understanding of trademark and copyright law, which I admit is limited at best, but I'm pretty sure that wouldn't make that. Honestly,
I could be wrong. I think I'm just remembering something some people are talking about on a podcast.
Honestly,
I heard a while ago, but
even the story as it stands, where they submitted it wrong, even that I don't think holds up anymore. Like, copyright, you don't actually have to do anything to copyright your own work. Yeah. Once it exists, you own the copyright on it.
Well, I wonder if, like, I don't know if he ever did, but if Romero ever tried to, go after anybody, if, that would have worked. I'm not sure if he ever tried or whatever, but
no, it was definitely not. It was clearly public domain. There was no hazy, like, is it or isn't it? Like, no, it was definitely public domain. Certainly something went wrong somewhere. It's really weird because I'd have to properly look into it. So I'm going to stop talking about it now because we're just going to go in circles, not really knowing. But it's just really weird. But either way, it wasn't intentional. It shouldn't be public domain, but it is. And because of that, because it's free to use, it always pops up in other movies on TV because it's something they can get for cheap that is also recognizable. So it pops up a lot. And that's really kind of... It also means that there's tons of DVDs of it that are really bad because these cheap companies can just get it and throw it out without doing any work. Yeah. So you get these really crappy DVDs of it because they don't have to pay for it. So, you know, it's a weird part of its legacy, but it's there. So that's one of the things it's known for, is that it pops up in movies a lot. Oh yeah, we talked about the ending. We talked about getting shot at the end. We didn't really mention how depressing the ending is. I mean, if you want to compare it again to like Vietnam, like, you know, no one wins. Like the ending, it's just depressing. The sort of oppressive status quo just kind of steamrolled on through without a care in the world. So it's a very downbeat ending. It's got a very somber. You know, you don't leave feeling happy. It's very bleak. It's very apocalyptic. And even though it seems like they're kind of dealing with the zombie menace at the end, it doesn't really feel like we won. It still feels like we lost.
Oh no!
Which is you know, depressing. So. Very, very, very bleak, which is ballsy for
a movie.
Well, a movie at its time. Certainly a horror movie. I mean, like, even up until this point, good guys typically won at the end. Yeah, the hero typically won. So
yeah, you know, just repeating myself at this point, but again, it's just so ahead of its time. It's crazy. So much stuff that, you know, we wouldn't bat an eye out now that. You know, seeing it in this movie, especially all together, it's crazy.
Yeah. It's I think Night of the Living Dead, it holds up. It holds up as a horror movie, certainly, but it holds up because it does have more going for it. There's deep characters, there's deep commentary. It's about stuff. It looks good. It's well shot. It is pretty much well acted for the most part. It's just. Like, there's very little to fault in it. Like I said, there's a couple of editing nitpicks, but that's kind of about it. Maybe like some of the earlier zombies could use more makeup. Like, maybe we would say that.
Yeah, if I I really love it, so I don't want to complain too much. If I did have any complaint, that would probably be the one thing is it would have been cooler to maybe see them a little more zombified, but obviously I understand the limit. The limitations and stuff at the time and money. It's completely understandable why they did what they were working with, but it still holds up even without that.
It's a classic case of a filmmaker having very little to work with and making it work and making it, you've got this one location, you've only got limited amount of like types of zombies and they only look so zombified, they otherwise look kind of normal. And somehow you take that and you still turn it into something that's very creepy, very chilling, very horrific. To go back to the compare it to Vietnam thing, the whole idea that all the violence you're seeing is very similar to what you're seeing in the news from Vietnam. And again, like, Barbara being shell shot when she sees that dead body at the top of the stairs, like stuff like that. Like all of it's kind of in there. So yeah, it's a movie that's largely about watching the news and nailing bits of wood to the window. But by God, is it entertaining and gives you a lot to think about. So ahead of its time, it's horror. It's horror that says something, and that is often a little bit rare, even today. Like that does definitely happens. It would definitely have some good conversations about some horror movies, but certainly Night of the Living Dead is where that kind of thing started.
So. And again, going back to earlier, we were talking about a lot of people have been tweeting and stuff about George Romero, which is really nice to see. So many fans and famous people, and
Edgar Wright put out a very nice sort of letter, open letter about it.
Oh, nice. I have to read that. I think the one that stood out probably the most to me was Jordan Peele had tweeted out a picture of Ben holding the shotgun, and he said something along the lines of like it all started here. No,
I saw that. I saw this. It was he started it.
He started, It
was almost like like it was meant to sound almost childish, like he started it. Like I think that's what the sort of joke he was going for, but with obviously a deeper meaning behind it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of this idea that he, like, Jordan Peele, of course, directed Get Out, which is, this movie from, directed by a black man from a black character's perspective about, how that approaches to horror. And it's kind of like Romero, in a weird way, did kind of start that path. Like,
Yeah.
maybe it didn't get another brick in the path for a while afterwards, and maybe it took a long time and whatever, but he made a decision, all those years ago, about casting this guy. It added so much social commentary in addition to what he already had going. Like, it was added layers on top of all the social and the war stuff that he was already commenting on, and then it added in this extra racial layer that he understood he was adding in, and he worked with that and made it more. And yeah, it's nice to see that inspired, well, everyone, but certainly the fact that the director of Get Out, who is making his own strides and doing things that we've not really seen been done before in cinema.
Yeah. And he titled, well, he said, like, the genre of Get Out, he's calling it like social horror, which I feel like you could make a case with this probably being maybe like the first example of like social horror, and then
I can see that.
Yeah.
It's also other little tidbits just in terms of his legacy. Have you ever watched the iZombie, Tim?
I saw like the first couple of episodes. It's good. It's just one of those things I haven't had a lot of time to catch up with yet.
That's cool. That's cool. I just wanted to bring up that in that show, the sort of basis for the character, the main character is a zombie, but in that show's lore, you're actually still fine and you're still smart as long as you have brains to eat, and you don't turn into what we see as the classical zombie until you go hungry, until you starve, and then you turn into like a full rage zombie. And the characters in this show call that being a Romero. That's what they call it in the show.
That's pretty cool.
So that's just one of those little tidbits that I really like.
Yeah, it's nice. That's I have read the comic books of iZombie. I don't remember if they specifically ever reference that, but they do have the same thing though, where she needs to eat brains. If not, she gets
it's the premise of the show. So I just wanted to bring that up, the fact that they use Romero as a term for the proper zombies. So he has left a legacy which, admittedly, for many people will not go outside his trilogy of zombie movies, because even his later zombie movies aren't that well liked, and honestly, for fair reason. I've not seen all of them, but I didn't like Land, and I didn't see the rest of them. That said, I'm sure we'll do them on here at some point, just because completion's sake. But certainly, we're doing Night, we're doing Dawn next week, we'll do Day the following week. So
I will say, I actually did. It's been a while since I've seen it, but I did like Land when I first saw it. And just outside of the zombie genres, I actually like quite a bit of his films. It's one of those things where I didn't really, realize it until, I kind of passed and I was sitting down and, just kind of looking over his work. And I was like, oh yeah, I did like that. Oh yeah, and I like that, and this, and this, and this. And,
he's got a few more films that I've seen of his, but I'm not going to spoil my thoughts on them because we'll probably do them at some point. So keep your whore mouth shut, Tim. So that is Night of the Living Dead. So fantastic, of course. Let us know what you thought of the movie in the comments below. Your own thoughts.
We still gotta do ratings, or?
Oh yes, sorry, yeah. I'm way ahead. It's because Tim, I've had so many tech issues tonight. My head's just not in the game. Tim,
it's all right.
Tim. What's your rating for Night of the Living Dead?
I'm going to give it. I really want to go high, up to that perfect 10, but I think I'm just gonna go a little bit below. I'm gonna give it a 9.5, and I'll explain that a little more in some of our later reviews, because it's gonna involve some of the trilogy as a whole. But
okay,
9.5. It's great.
So it's funny. I think when I first saw Night, several many years ago, maybe 10 years ago, maybe a little bit longer than that actually now, in my high school days, I think it was a 9 from the get-go, and over time I've appreciated it more. Like I think the first time I watched it, maybe the commentary of it didn't really dawn on me. It was just as a horror movie, as the core ideas, and even just the simple idea that if you strip away the social commentary, the movie itself is just about how people turn on each other. It's not really the zombies that actually kill them, it's them not being able to work together that does them in, really, in the end. So, and I think that's fascinating. I think it's fascinating that they use the zombies to analyze human behavior. The zombies are just a tool, they're a storytelling device, and they're a metaphor, and that is, and compare that to shitty zombie movies that are made where it is just, oh, we need to run away from the zombies because they're going to eat us.
Yeah. These are my classic slow walking zombies. Oh man, do I miss
don't know. that first one at the start was shuffling along quite quickly for a classic Romero.
Okay, but in general, for the most part, these are a little more shambly. They're not like freaking like cheetahs like we see in other movies.
It's tempting to go perfect as well, but I think I'm going to agree with you and go with 9.5. I'm going to agree with you and go with 9.5. That's my stance. 9.5 for Night of the Living Dead.
You had to say it twice because he just couldn't believe you're agreeing with me.
I know, it's... Honestly, Tim, I feel like there's a lot of reviews here where I feel like I'll have a number in mind and then you'll go to describe your number and then you'll say the exact same number that I had in my mind and I'll be like, God damn it, he keeps doing that. So, I don't know. But yeah, so 9.5 is all around then for Night of the Living Dead.
Huzzah.
Aye, so we'll be back. We'll have another movie review later this week. We've got another one planned, and then we'll have Dawn next week and Day the following week. So we're going to have the trilogy, the famous trilogy, done over the next couple of weeks. So that's exciting. It did push a couple of things back that we had planned. It does mean that our Saw reviews are going to be a bit more closer together, which is kind of scary. But this felt important to do this now to honor the father of an entire genre. To one of the, if you're going to do a Mount Rushmore of horror directors, Romero's face is on that mountain. So,
without a doubt. Yeah.
So here we go. That has been Night of the Living Dead. Let us know what you thought of the movie in the comments below. Like, subscribe, all that stuff. Head over to patreon.com/MailFuzzTV if you like what we do here and want to support the channel and all the streams episodes we could be pumping out. Go over there and sign up. But otherwise, guys, that is us. So thank you very much once again for watching. Keep watching scary movies. We'll see you next time.